Okay, good afternoon, British and American culture students. This is going to be the last lecture. This is optional, so you don't have to worry about the attendance being counted or not. This is just for your own benefit. I think this will probably be 10 minutes or 15 minutes long. Part of the reason is that although I do have the exam, the copy of the exam, I don't have a whiteboard and I don't have any of my stuff because I got COVID and I had to stay home I have to stay home until next Thursday. That's the government policy. So when you do this exam, I will not be there. I'm not allowed. This is annoying, disappointing and annoying. The timing is bad. I made jokes all semester that I hoped I would get COVID, and I finally got it at the very end of the semester, which is right before exams. It's not the best time to to deal with it. But anyway, you may have noticed last Sunday, I was obviously getting sick from something. I didn't know what it was. The video was probably my worst one this semester, and I was sneezing and blowing my nose in the middle of it. I guess that was the beginning of COVID. So now I'm still alive, and those of you who are sick, I understand. Wednesday we have the exam, so you got to be there in person, and you have to do it. There's not really much room for retaking the exam. If you have COVID and you can't come, then obviously you need to document it and submit your proof to the English department, and then we have to do something about that. So let's talk about the exam. The exam is 40 multiple choice and 2 long answer. I call them short answer, but the students usually call them long answer questions. Same as the midterm. You understand what is required. You need to fill out this scan sheet properly, carefully, with your student number and your name, and make sure that you circle the bubbles carefully. On the exam, yes, the first half of the class, which includes the kings and queens of England, maybe you've realized by now, and I've told you, that I find that part of the course the most interesting. It's just the personalities of the British crown and how they contributed to, the developments of British culture. I find very fascinating. This is King Alfred. This is a coloring book, by the way. Only a super nerd, if you're from Japan and an otaku, would buy a coloring book like this. But this is a coloring book. The Kings and Queens of England. And I actually have been super busy, so I bought this book a long time ago. But that's King Alfred. That's my Technicolor Alfred. Lots of color in that picture. Well, remember the story about him letting the buns burn? And that's King Canute, which you don't have to know that for the exam, but that's King Canute telling the waves, to behave. And this is Harold Godwinson. I haven't actually finished coloring this one, but this is the Anglo-Saxons, defending their territory against the Norman invasion. You should know the big things. Just study your quizzes. You don't need to read the book, but I do want to emphasize you have to know the social, cultural, and historical context that we used for the first assignment. You must know that. If you don't study that, you're going to have trouble with some questions, okay? That's on the exam, guaranteed. Dominant culture, subculture. This is right at the end of the introduction, okay? Read the end of the introduction and then study your quizzes and know the 14th century stuff like the Black Death, You got to, sorry, yeah, the 14th century and, the beginning, the famine, the Black Death, and the Peasant Revolt, Henry VIII, 16th century stuff, the invader, the Celtic people that inhabited Britain, followed by the Romans, the Anglo-Saxons, the Vikings, and the Normans. You should know that that's stuff you should never forget. I don't expect you to know everything I've taught you. You're not supposed to be the professor of this class. That's not the point. You need to know the big points. The Magna Carta, we talked about that a lot. You know, the major figures, the writers, we talked about Chaucer and Shakespeare and Austen, Charles Dickens, Isaac Newton, John Locke. I picked out these people because I think they're important and they have significant contributions to British American culture. So those kind of things are emphasized. And then you just have to study what we did from the second half. There's about 10 questions out of 40 that are related to the first half of the class. So if you really want to get an A+, you can't forget everything. That's all I have to say. It's not to make you stressed out. It's not to make you suffer or anything like that. It's because at the end of the day, the course, whatever grade you get, should contribute somehow to your understanding of the world, as I said. And I think the social context, cultural context, and historical context stuff, the framework for understanding cultural studies that we looked at in the first assignment, and the relationship between dominant culture, subculture, and counterculture, which is so important to American culture, but it's important to any culture. That's, for example, the dominant culture in Korea remains Confucian with an age and male patriarchal, power being the, dominant culture of Korea. And then if you want to live your life differently, you have to either resist it directly or subtly, carve out your own way of behaving, and that would be a subculture. If you want to exist, alongside the dominant culture, you have to seek some kind of tolerance and then make your own lifestyle that's a little bit different, but is acceptable to the dominant culture. The dominant culture is always going to assert itself, right? You can see this in all kinds of ways in Korean culture, but we used British and American culture as an example. So right up to the end of chapter 7. Chapter 8 is not on the exam. There's nothing from chapter 8 about that. There's nothing about guns or the New World Order or the songs that I chose to talk about because we didn't get there because I got sick. As you know, the main theme of the course was evolution, revolution. You should be able to talk about industrialization. You should be able to talk about imperialism with respect to the British. You should be able to talk about the 20th century and how America became a superpower. And you should be able to talk about American cinema because those were significant things that I spent a lot of time explaining, and those are potential long answer questions, not just multiple choice questions, because those are worth 1 point each, but those last two questions are worth 5 each, and that really makes the difference. It's 20% of the exam. It's 25% of the midterm. It's 20% of the exam. It's 10 points. So if you get perfect on the short answer, it's a huge difference between doing your multiple choice and then doing badly, and getting 2 or 3 points out of the last 10. That's the difference between an A and a B. So be prepared to write, 5 or 6 sentences, clearly demonstrating that you understand about that the idea, whatever the question is. 20th century America, American cinema, talking about American expansion in the West, or industrialization, or what else did I say? Imperialism, British imperialism, pros and cons. There's 5 or 6 different possibilities, that's it. So you should prepare for that. I don't want you to memorize it. I just want you to know how to explain to somebody in English what that means. This is the most important part of the course, is that you understand about British and American culture, you understand the cultural theories and how to apply them, and you're able to communicate those ideas in English. If you can do that, you are an A+ student. That's what I'm looking for. I know the test is hard, and I know you've studied hard, and it's been a long semester, so I wish you good luck. And on Wednesday, I will not be there, unfortunately, so listen to the instructions and do your best, and hopefully you'll get a good outcome. Thank you for taking the course, and have a Merry Christmas. Thanks.